Okay, so can you share a moment when you first began to understand your own neurodivergence or your child's, and then what shifted for you in that season?
Well, that's a great question. I would say a moment, particularly for my son, I remember being at the park. This is after COVID, which in the UK we had extreme lockdowns, kind of not leaving our house really. So it was after that we went to the park. The parks had just reopened, and he was playing with some kids, and the way he was playing was just extremely different. And it's hard to describe it beyond that, but it was just watching them. I was like, oh, he's playing with them, but he's not really playing with them and not reacting kind of the way that they're reacting. And that moment was a really big kind of, okay, this is different. And
Mhm.
I thought, is this because of COVID or is this something else? And so the rest of that time we were at the park and then kind of a few other times at the park, I just started to really notice that. And I asked a teacher friend as well, I was like, oh, this is kind of how he's behaving. Is this normal? And that, I, moment stands so clearly out to me because it was just that kind of, oh, this is different. He's different. And that's okay. He's still my boy, but it's
Yeah,
just different.
absolutely.
And so, yeah, from that kind of moment, I mean, I can still picture me at the park seeing that. But from that moment, kind of just realizing, okay, he just reacts to the world differently, and we're gonna just shift with that, and we're gonna start doing different things in our house that are how he needs instead of kind of what the world says, if that makes sense. And
Yep.
um, that idea that yeah, we just kind we one thing that I noticed was emotions. Like he just couldn't I mean, he still can't really control his emotions. So he's either extremely happy or extremely mad, and there's not often in between. And so,
Yeah.
and he can quickly go from happy to mad in seconds. Like you're like, whoa, okay, this is where where have you gone from this? And so yeah, that was something that we just have really started to shift was talking about our emotions, putting kind of quote unquote faces to our emotions. So we have a whole emotion reel wheel, I should say, on our door, and things we can do with those emotions. Because that was something else that when we kind of noticed and had that moment of, okay, he's responding to the world differently, is also giving him tools of what he can do with those emotions. So, for example, we know he's mad because he'll just start stomping his feet because that was something we said like when you're mad you can stomp your feet, because he likes to hit, unfortunately. And so that was something we could kind of see like, okay, when you're mad, you stomp your feet. And yeah, just kind of trying to help him give words to his emotions, but also actions to his emotions so that we could kind of have those conversations and start kind of talking about what he was feeling and how he was feeling and what he could do with what he was feeling.
Absolutely. And so we go into motherhood like thinking we know what we're gonna do, right? Like we like, okay, study all the books, got all the parenting things all together. We're like, okay, let's do this. And then we have kids. And normally we have kids who, fit in the whatever I don't think there's really a normal box, but like hit all the stages and we go, okay, we still have to shifting, change because we're not, racing cars where they're all different manufacturer. They all have their own idiosyncrasies and that kind of thing. But, when you have a child that goes from happy to mad and there's nothing in between, how did that change your perspective of parenting, and how were you able to just kind of adapt to that?
Yeah. So funny you should say that because I literally was just talking to a friend about how I used to babysit like when I was, 14, 15, 16. And I thought I was a great babysitter. People
Yeah.
like I was booked out for a while. I was great. And I was like, I'm gonna rock motherhood. Like this is like one, this is easy. Okay. Two, like, I'm great at this. And then I have my own kids, and now it's like the amount of like bribing I do with my kids, I'm like, it's insane. But that is one thing that I will say, I do a lot of, which people probably might have thoughts about, but is that kind of bribery, because partly what he needs is a dopamine hit. His brain needs that, yes, this a reward, that kind of dopamine hit. And so if he does something and he gets a reward for it that he wants, he's more likely going to do that. And so one thing I had to kind of just give myself grace for and allow is that kind of, okay, you do this for me, I'm going to do this for you. Or, you can put your clothes on. So one thing we do is I like to have kind of funky earrings, and I have lots of them. My husband says I'm not allowed to buy any more, and yet they just appear in my mailbox. Okay, like can't I don't know what to do about that. But and so one thing is but my son doesn't like wearing clothes. He finds those textures kind of difficult, but of course going to school he also can't be naked. So we compromise, we bribe in the sense of he gets dressed and then he gets to pick out my earrings for the day.
My
And so
goodness, I love it.
yeah. And for him, he loves it. He loves it. It doesn't always have to be something extreme, like it can be something like that. He likes that. He likes picking out my earrings. And that's partly why if you ever see me, if I have a really cool outfit on and you're like, your earrings aren't matching, you'll know why. You'll know, like, I, that's how we got our son dressed. But also, someone once asked me, I didn't have earrings in. They're like, did, did your son not get dressed today? Like, and I was like, well, he did, but he didn't, not in time to pick out earrings. I was like, I did not send my son naked to school, okay?
Yeah.
But, so things like that, I guess I've just had to kind of, I never thought I would do that. I thought my kids are going to be well behaved because I'm a great mom. Like, I'm not going to need that. So one is, yeah, bribery to kind of both parties get what they want. The other thing is just something that I still am learning. This isn't, please don't hear I've learned this, but it's the amount of stares I get for my parenting. And I've gotten some comments, but I don't know if it's maybe because I live in the UK, people don't make as many comments, but I get a lot of stares and a lot of like, how, like, you're allowing this kind of look.
Right.
And it's, it has gotten better because we are, like, at least in the UK, there's different lanyards and kind of things that you can wear to kind of show like, hey, we need some extra space. And those are becoming more nationally known, which is great. But I've had to just learn that my child is being, like, we're being judged for this moment, but they don't know all the other moments, and idea that it's not, this one moment does not define us. And so, because often it's a moment where he's having a meltdown, or something's happening to cause a little bit of a scene. It's not like we're happily playing. It's something
Right.
that's often going on. And so it's that I can just, yeah, I've learned to kind of just block them out and then deal with my son. And then if something is said to me, or those looks kind of continue after that moment's done, I can then kind of go and, well, not go, but I can either decide to use my energy that way or not. But it's often I just kind of have to go, those looks don't matter because they don't see our whole life. They're just seeing a moment. And the likelihood is we're probably never going to see these people again. It's very like,
Yeah.
we live in quite a big city, and so it's like the likelihood of us actually seeing these people again is very rare. So, they can look at us for a moment and move on, and we can deal with our moment and move on as well.
Yeah. Well, I think though that there's that piece in every mom that is like, we want our kids to be liked. We want our kids to be accepted. So like, it's hard to overcome that sometimes, right? In our head, we go, okay, well, this is just where we're at, and this is who it is. And it's okay if people are giving us stares, or it's okay if people are looking weird. It doesn't mean that he's not likable. It doesn't mean that, he's not going to have friends. He won't have connections. He won't, he'll just be this. I am the extreme mom, right? So like I was sure that my oldest was never going to be potty trained, and I was in that moment fearing that, like, oh my gosh, he's going to go to high school and I'm going to have to buy Depends because he just is never going to, like, I always like
Yeah.
go to the extreme, right? So like I would be, and my oldest has an anxiety disorder, and so he would like totally blank out for periods of time, or he would like go into fits of rage. And so, that feeling of, oh my gosh, he's going to spend his whole adult life in jail. He's just not, I And so, but knowing that it's okay, right? Like if people are looking at us or are, giving us extra space, like it doesn't mean that as adults they're just going to be some, lonely hermit on an island by themselves somewhere.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, yeah. And I mean, my son is so social. We toyed with the idea of homeschooling him, but we knew actually it wouldn't help him because he's such a social butterfly. I mean, he literally walks into the school gate and the amount of children saying his name and greeting and, kind of
I
saying hi to
love
him,
that.
it's amazing. It's so I'm like, oh, we always joke that he's like the mayor of the school. Like, because everyone knows his name.
Amazing.
But like, yeah, the idea that, again, in these moments, like, it is that moment. So he still has friends, like you said, he still has those connections. And, if they want to look, they want to look. I also like to think like they're just looking. I will say I do try and dress somewhat nice when I go, particularly when I go grocery shopping, because that seems to be when we have more of the meltdowns. Because then I'm like, you can just look at my cool outfit. Like
Right.
that's what
So
I'm just like, go ahead, look. You can look and be like, wow, she looks good. She's hand,
as
like her kid's having a meltdown, but she looks good. So
that, and when you look good, you feel good, right?
yeah, exactly, yeah, exactly.
When you come, I like the show Love on the Spectrum. I didn't watch the first two seasons, but I watched the third season. But even more than that, I have got connected with the moms of the show through their podcasts and through different things. And it's so interesting that they talk about the struggle because there was, I mean, obviously there's always been the spectrum, but there wasn't any help. There wasn't any, they had to just kind of figure things out on their own, like on the fly. And first of all, it's fascinating to hear all the different stories and all the different ways, that they were accommodated through school and what they did and how they, progressed on that. And I think that raising kids now is a little bit different. There's a lot more supports. Have you found that to be true? Is there-
Um, yes and no. I think we've
okay.
come a long way in the last 10 years. I think awareness has really improved, but I
Mhm.
think there's a difference between awareness and acceptance. And I don't think people have accepted neurodivergent children, adults. And because of that, then the kind of support is really hit and miss. So I literally 2 weeks ago, I had a conversation with our school. So my son has this last year. So in the UK, he starts at 4. And so from 4 to 5, the what we call reception was a horrible year. I had to drag him in. He didn't enjoy it. He was dysregulated all the time. Just really no support. And partly was because they had to quote unquote show what he's like without support, which seems so silly. I'm like, how can we how can we be doing this? But we finally at the end of his reception year gotten some support ready for September, which he's now in year 1. And this year has been such a difference. Like, I mean, black and white difference, night and day difference, because he has support. He has, not quite a one-to-one, but he has his own desk, he has his own space, he has what he needs, and he runs into school. He
And now
has
he's the
friends.
mayor.
Yeah, and now he's the mayor, exactly. And 2 weeks ago, this not the school, but the kind of funding of his support came in and said, "Oh, because he's doing so well, we're just going to pull his funding." And the school, I will say, the school isn't always, but they were on my they were on my side this time, going, "Wait, hold on a second, like." Why are we pulling, like, just because he's doing great doesn't mean we need to stop funding. Like, he's doing great because of the funding, because of the support he has, and things like that. And so I think that's where, yes, we've come a long way. I think back to a friend whose sibling is a level 3 autistic, now an adult, but at the time obviously was in elementary, and they had very little support, very little um, help in that. And I think back, like, to them, and I think we have come a long way, but we're not quite there yet. We're not, I'm still having to have conversations with school about what he needs and how, kind of how to go about it. Because one thing I will say is, like you've mentioned, it's a spectrum, and when you know one autistic person, you know one autistic person because everyone is so different and unique. And so what works for one child doesn't work for another.
Yep.
I think about my son's best friend who so my son's autistic ADHD. He's the same. And my son loves making noise. He is constantly what we call vocal stimming. He is making random noises. He's repeating songs. Like he is just making noise. But for his best friend, that gets really overwhelming for him. And like he needs like movement to like help him. And so I just find that so funny. Like these two little boys are so similar, same age, and yet what they both need to regulate are two different things. And what one needs then dysregulates the other one. Like it's
Hmm.
so funny. But yeah, so I think because of that though, because everyone is individual, the schools and some of the support don't quite know how to do that because they're like, well, this is what we know. This is what we can do. And it's like, well, it doesn't quite work for everyone. So yeah, as much as we've made some big steps, I don't think we're quite there.
Yeah, yeah. So how was that as a mom, to have, knowing that like the first year when it was not the greatest year, you knew that you had to take your son to school. Um, how did you do it? How did you cope?
Yeah, lots of tears. So I would say about 18 months ago, I was in such an isolating, overwhelming place. And I talk about how it felt like I was dropped into a pitch black maze and told to get out, find your way out. And literally kind of catapulted in. It wasn't a easing my way in. It was, you're here now. And it was hard. It was that idea of knowing I couldn't be the only one. I was like, I know my son is not the only child who is autistic ADHD, but yet feeling very much like I was the only one, partly because of, a lot of my friends, a lot of other mums weren't going through that or aren't going through that. Or even just other adults, like not either not having kids or their kids are older I have quite a few friends. I live in the UK, but I grew up in the US. So a lot of friends are in the US, which is a completely different system. And so
Yep.
just felt so isolating and so and just overwhelming. I remember there would be days. So I have a younger son, who's 3, who's not quite at school, and we take our older one to school, and I would come back and I would put on like Hey Dougie or some show so he could sit and watch that for a little bit, and I would just go in the kitchen and cry and
Yeah.
just be like, okay, cry because I was sad that he had to go and he was so upset. So, cry because it's so emotionally draining to
Hmm.
try and just all of it. Like the morning would just be so emotionally draining. Cry because of school just you know weren't aren't weren't on the same page. Kind of try they were just very hard to kind of advocate for him all the time. Like I mean, every day it was like something I would have to say to them, and then at the end of the day, I'd always get some sort of, they call it quote unquote feedback. I call it not. But like they would tell
Right.
me like, oh, your son hit a child today, so you'll need to talk to him about that. And it's like, I can talk to him about that. You're right. Like totally we will. But like, what did you do in the moment? Like that's what, why didn't you deal with like he's at school? Like
Yeah,
it was
there's a
just
bigger
very weird.
picture here, right?
Yeah.
Than just,
Yeah.
that isolated incident too, because like he's still learning how to regulate his emotions and his hands. And like when you have someone who's not on the spectrum, you can have a discussion and we can talk about this is not what we do. This is what we hands are for loving and all those different things. But um it's different. Like the brain, their brains are wired different, and so you have to be able to work together with the teacher in tandem and be able to go, okay, yes, he's hitting because of this. So how can we come alongside him and and help him process through that in the moment, because it's not going to work when I take him home and talk about it. It's like that moment is gone. It's over. Like we've moved on to other things now.
Yeah. I mean, he like the amount, and this, I mean, some of this I know is like just typical little kid, but like he doesn't even remember things that happened during the day. So I'll get a rundown from his teacher. His teacher will send me a note of roughly the rundown for the whole week. It's not every day, but kind of just things we're doing. So then, one, we can talk about it at school, but two, like I can help him because one of the things we found was preparing him for stuff. And so, Sunday nights we'll start talking about school and we'll say how, we have school tomorrow. We're going to do some reading tomorrow. We're going to do maths tomorrow, different things that he'll be doing. And then Monday night we'll talk about Tuesday and kind of as the week goes on. And I'll say like, "Oh, did you do reading today?" And I'm like, "I don't know." Like, and I'm like, "I know you did." Like, I'm I knew you did, but like, and so trying to discipline him for something that he has zero clue that happened, or he's completely moved on and forgot. Like, that's torture. I mean, we actually set up with the school. So I literally I was talking to my counselor about this a few months ago and was saying how between about 2:45 to 3:30, which is roughly kind of when I'm going to pick up kids and then we'll play a little bit on the playground and then come home. I get really tense. My body just gets really tense. And I was like, I was telling her, I don't know why. I don't know why. And we were kind of talking about it. And I realized that my body gets tense because all of last year, I would have the teacher pull me aside, or I'd have to go into the classroom and not get told off, but sort of get told off because of what my son did. And so my body was just kind of getting prepared for that fight or flight mode and get really
Yep.
tense of like what's going to happen. And so to help me not feel that, like, and this year is completely different. I've not had that. Like but yet my body's just used to it. I mean, it's been doing that, for a year. Like it's used to it. And so we set up, which will sound so strange to say, I've set up an accommodation for myself. But we set up accommodation where at school will only contact me through, we have an app. And so they can send direct messages that way because then I I can feel comfortable going and picking up my son and not feeling stressed that I'm
Yeah.
going to get told off, so to speak, from what my son's done. And it's things like that I just think other parents don't have. They don't,
Yeah.
they don't stress about going to pick up their kids
Right.
because
Right,
they've not
because
had
they're
to,
gonna hear
they
about the bubbly things that happen at recess and all those different things they're not, they're not set up to have. Who knows? Oh, great. Who's gonna tell me today what happened? Like, did he hit? Did he not sit in his seat? Did he, whatever. Yeah. Yeah.
yeah, yeah, and
So
it's exactly that.
so you
So yeah.
mentioned that you were just that first year, you were just in kind of a dark place. What did you kind of do to pull yourself out? What kind of steps did you take to kind of make it so that it was better? I mean, I'm glad this year's better, but how did you get through last year?
Yeah. Yeah. So one of the things I started doing was just started talking about it on social media because I was like, okay, I know I'm not the only one. Science has literally told me that 20% of the world is autistic. So, well, not autistic, neurodivergent, I should say. A large portion of that is autistic. So I was like, okay, I'm going to start sharing because I want people to know. One, I wanted to see who else was out there. I'll be honest. But two, also for people to know that when my child is having that meltdown in the grocery store, like it's not what you think it is. It's not because he didn't get the M&Ms that he's holding in his hand. It's because 10 other things have happened that morning, or whatever. Like, could be three other things, but whatever. Like, he is coming into a meltdown not because he want like not because of what's actually happening, if that makes sense. And so I wanted to kind of just share that every day. And through social media, people started coming out of the woodworks. People were like, "Oh yeah, my son's autistic," or "I'm autistic," or "I have ADHD," or just different things that like people kind of just started sharing, which was really encouraging to hear. Again, that kind of I'm not alone, and just that idea of there are people there are people out there who get it, who get why I'm exhausted all the time, who get, who just get it. That's what I say is there's people out there who just get it. The other thing I did was I went to the school and I just said, you know, there are again, clearly like studies show there should be roughly 100 kids in the school who are on the spectrum for whatever reason. I want to meet their parents. And the school at first was a little like, this is weird. And so I was like, they're like, we can't just give you names. I was like, no, no, no. Like, can we do like a coffee morning or something that, aware that it would likely be a lot of mums. Often that is something moms carry, as well as studies have shown a lot of kids who are autistic or ADHD or both live in a single, uh, not with both parents, basically. So, and they often live with their mom. And so, again, I was just like, let's do a coffee morning. So it took a little while, but in the end, we got a coffee morning going. And we had like 16 other moms come, and at the kind of coffee morning, I was like, okay, here's a sign up sheet so we can all join a WhatsApp group and like be friends. Basically, I was like, you will be my friend. Uh, so we joined. So I started a WhatsApp group for these mums, and we've done coffee mornings kind of once every 2 months or so, kind of just at school, very casual. We've brought in a few people as well, like who work with our kids in the school. So maybe like a speech and language therapist or a emotion regulating therapist, things like that. So there's been some structure to sometimes the coffee mornings, but we've also just been like, let's just get together and let's meet. And then in between having the WhatsApp group to kind of just be like, I remember one day being like, we made it to school on time. And like all these people were like, yeah, yay. Like, just again, having this group of people who get it, who were like, you know, uh, or asking, hey, I had this meeting, any tools or advice or, just things like that. So, because that's something I think as well I realized is I go into school to meet with the school probably every 3 to 4 weeks. And it's not always a bad meeting. It's a support meeting or it's whatever. There's lots of meetings. And that's something that I hadn't realized that my friends who don't have neurodivergent kids aren't doing. They're not in the school every 3 to 4 weeks uh, having those meetings. And so having this group of mums who understand what 3 to 4 weeks meetings are that are draining, that I have left the school in tears more times than I can count because you're talking about I kind of always start the meeting with two things. I always say, one, you're going to tell me something positive about my son before we start, because often the meetings aren't
Yep.
positive meetings. And so I've said, everyone will go around the room. You've all observed my son for whatever reason. You're going to tell me something positive. And then just to start and remind that I say, this is my world. He is my world, and I want the best for
Mhm.
my world. And so I'm going to sit here and fight for him. And that might mean I cry. That might mean I get really red in the face. It might mean that I get frustrated. But you have to remember, he's my world. He's not a and I said, I understand that he's a number to you or he's a name to you, but to me, he's my world. And since doing those two things at the start of every meeting, to the point where now I've met with someone so many times, they're like, we know what you're going to say. Like, we know. And I'm like, but starting those meetings have kind of helped one, shift the tone a little bit to remind them that this is a child, because I think sometimes we can forget that, like
Yep.
that
It's
this is,
like check the box. Let me go through my
yep,
list of things I have to tell you, and then we'll be done. Yeah.
yep,
Yeah.
exactly. And so, and two, it just reminds them that, again, the idea, I always say he's my world, recognizing he's not everyone's world because he's not their child. Like, I know
Right.
that, I
Yep.
recognize that. But you also, like, they need to also recognize where I'm coming from and that I'm not going to just roll over because I'm a mama bear and I'm gonna fight for my son.
Yeah. Absolutely.
And so, but yeah, so kind of all of that, like combined, just realizing that there's this community out there and just using my voice to do that. And it's from actually having these coffee mornings and kind of talking to some other friends, that I then actually started a podcast as well. So it's probably one of so I also have ADHD. So it's probably the one of the most ADHD things I've ever done. But I had a conversation with my friend about our life, and because she would ask, like, she wanted to hear more about what we do to kind of help with different things. And afterwards, she's like, "Oh, you should really start a podcast. This is so helpful." And, blah, blah, blah. And I was like, that's like 10 o'clock in the morning. And by the time my husband got home from work, I had like a website set up. I'd like gotten the socials and I was
Oh
like,
my
okay. And I
goodness.
like bought a mic and I was like, okay, I'm starting a podcast. And he was like, what? Like, do you know what you're doing? I was like, no idea. No idea what I'm doing, but we're starting a podcast. Like, this is our life now. It's like, literally. And he was like,
Right.
oh, okay. Okay. Like, should we like talk about this? I'm like, nope, nope, we're doing it.
We're
Like
doing it.
we're
Yeah.
we're doing it. So yeah, that was probably the most ADHD thing I've done. But that was another way of kind of getting to connect more with the community, is having these conversations with people who, some of them are parents, some of them are experts. But just hearing again, just like kind of consistently hearing their experiences and knowing like, oh yeah, okay, I'm not alone, has really helped to kind of just be able to get out that dark place and kind of be able to. I always kind of I think of we watch a lot of Frozen in our house, and in Frozen 2, there's like that scene where Anna just has to do the next right step or the next step. Um, and that was kind of for me, just doing having these conversations is kind of just the next step and the next.
Yeah. So this sounds like an exciting podcast. So tell me, and those who are listening, what is the name of it? Where can we find it?
Yeah, so it's called The Unfinished Idea. Another very ADHD thing because I have about a million of them. But yeah, so it's called The Unfinished Idea. You can find it wherever you find podcasts. It's I always say follow the brain because it's like a brain logo. And I'm on, yeah, I have a website, which is The Unfinished Idea, and then socials again is The Unfinished Idea, all of which are the brain logo. So I just say follow the brain.
Yeah. And we'll have those in the comments below or in the description below. So you can click on that and, check those kind of things out. So, I like to do a thing at the end of every podcast called the hot seat. And so I'm going to ask you 10 questions and just answer whatever comes to your mind first.
Okay.
Okay,
I
here's
will
my
I will
list.
just say this could go horribly wrong or be great because my ADHD brain could go
It's going to
yes
be horribly
or
great. That's what it's
yeah.
going to be. Okay. What is your favorite way to unwind after a busy day?
Watching just I call it an everyday TV show, so like Gilmore Girls, Friends, Grey's Anatomy, one that I can just watch and just kind of I know what's happening because I've seen it so many times, but
Yeah,
it's
yeah.
always
I
new.
call
It's
those
always new.
bubblegum shows because you're engaged enough, but you don't have to like your whole brain doesn't have to be engaged in
Yes.
those. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, I like that title. Yeah, that's a good name.
Coffee, tea, or something else to start your morning.
Tea. I live in England, so definitely tea. I will say I can only have one. I have one quote unquote normal everyday tea, and then the rest I have peppermint tea for the rest of the day because I find caffeine is just not great.
Yeah. So what's your favorite tea?
I love it's a peppermint hibiscus blend, which
Mm,
you wouldn't think goes together, but it's like a tropical minty. I like to think of it as like a mojito. It's kind of I don't know. It sounds that's
I
what
love
it.
hibiscus, so I may have to try that.
Yeah.
What's one thing people would be surprised to learn about you?
Well, if you've only met me online, people are, and then when I meet them in person, are quite surprised how tall I am. So I'm 6'1". So on the screen, I don't look 6'1" because you just see my head. But when I meet in person, I'm 6'1". So I've had quite a few people go, "Oh, I didn't realize how tall you were."
Too that I've known online for a long time. And then she told me she was 5'11". I was like, what? You are? Really? It's just, you just have that little, there's amazing what perspective you can get from just like the shoulders up.
Yeah.
Okay. So if you could have dinner with any historical woman, who would it be?
Oh, can they be dead or alive?
Yeah. Dead or
Yeah.
alive.
I would say the Queen, like Queen Elizabeth, or Condoleezza Rice.
Oh, I love that. I love that. So if you had tea with the queen, would you bring in hibiscus and peppermint and have her try it?
Oh, yes. Yeah, definitely. Well, yes, I would want to. I think I would chicken out though. I might chicken out. So,
Yeah,
but
because like that's it's amazing how like on screen you're like, oh yeah, it'd be casual, we'd be fine. But then in her presence, it's like, ooh,
yeah.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah, I was in the presence of someone who I like who was a star, had to do an interview with them. And the whole time I was like, well, actually, what I did was the first 5 seconds, I said, I'm really just going to freak out for 5 seconds because you're you're a star, and then I'll be cool. And they're like, oh, okay. Like, and I was like, you're just so cool. Oh my gosh, you're me. Like, and it's like 10 seconds, and then I was fine. It was like, I just had to get it out. So I think, yeah,
It's like, do not put a camera on those 10 minutes while I'm waiting because it's not going to be pretty. Like, I'm going to be fidgeting and be making sure my dress is just the way it's supposed to be. And, like,
yes, exactly.
So, are you more of a beach or mountain person?
Beach all the way, 100%,
Yeah.
which is very sad because they don't really have very good beaches here in England. So,
Where do
um,
you guys go to the beach? Do you take like vacations to other countries?
yeah, so we've gone to like Spain is a very beach. And then my parents live in South Carolina, so we've done Myrtle Beach is also a
It's beautiful beaches in South Carolina.
yeah, yeah. So we went to a beach in Wales, which is a rocky beach, and my son was like, "This isn't a beach." Like he'd never been to a rocky beach. He was like, "No, this is not a beach. This is just
Yeah,
rocks." Like, yeah, it
true.
was really funny. Like, and I was like, "Yeah, fair." Like,
My brother and sister-in-law live in Wales, and so they send pictures back, and I think the exact same thing. That is not a beach.
yeah.
So, what's your favorite comfort food?
Oh, well, I love Chick-fil-A. We don't have it in England either, so my parents send over Chick-fil-A sauce.
Yeah.
Um, and I love like enchiladas or burritos,
Mm.
which I can make pretty good here. Again, Mexican food isn't quite a thing in England, so I've had to really learn to make it. But um, yeah, those are two things whenever I go back to the US. I
Yeah.
the first like three
Inhale.
days.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like yeah,
Yeah.
the first 3 days is basically just me getting all of that and then kind of peter off. And then it's like the last 3 days before I leave, I'm like, I gotta get my fill again. So yeah.
Is there a place you can buy tortillas or do you make your own for
Ye
enchiladas?
yeah, so there is this place I have to do online. They're based out of Scotland of all places. I'm like, okay. It's like long story short, she used to live actually in Dallas, Texas, and then moved to Scotland when she got married or something like that. But she gets somehow ported all these kind of Hispanic Mexican ingredients. So I actually just buy bulk stuff from her and then freeze. So we have like a whole drawer of just like Mexican-ness in our freezer
I love
because it's just like, here's a bulk order. And then, it lasts us probably about 3 or 4 months. And then I'll do another
You
big
have
bulk.
to acclimate your boys a little bit to the American side of their
Yeah.
family, right? Yeah.
Oh, yeah, definitely. Oh, yeah, definitely.
Well, friends, this is the part where you were supposed to hear my rapid fire questions to Greer, but as it turns out, my microphone had other plans. Greer could hear me just fine, but somewhere between my mouth and the recording, my mic, it decided to take a little coffee break. So, if it sounded like Greer was just spontaneously confessing her love for tacos or declaring a hidden talent with zero context, that's why. Hey, it's real life, and real life doesn't always hit record the way we want it to. But I hope you enjoyed hearing her answers as much as I did, even if my side of the conversation went silent podcast ninja for the last piece. Thanks for rolling with us, and remember, in motherhood, in podcasting, and in life, sometimes the mic cuts out, and we keep going anyway. See you next time, mamas.